In May 2018, the EU General Data Protection Regulation will become law.
Every business, public authority, charity, school and hospital. And any entity that holds or uses European personal data will be captured by the new law, regardless of where in the world they're situated.
In preparation for the GDPR, IAPP members met in Brussels, Belgium, to hear regulators and data privacy experts explain the intention and implementation challenges to companies doing business in the EU or handling the personal data of EU citizens. One of the presenters, Dr. Hubertus Knaba, an historian who was executive director at the former Stasi prison, now a museum in the former East Berlin, captivated the audience with his knowledge and perspective on the potential misuse of personal data. His views are informed by research into Stasi methods of surveillance, torture, and population control, as well as his personal history with Stasi surveillance. Dr. Knaba was interviewed at his Berlin office inside the Stasi prison by Veronika Tonry, a global data protection expert and president of Privacy Know-How.
So what attracted you to the study of history? And as you've been learning from it, how has that shaped your view of personal data? How it's being collected and how it's being used for good and bad purposes?
So some people are saying that there are no accidents. I'm not sure if I came to this topic by accident or if there was some destination, because my parents escaped from East Germany. They lived in East Berlin, and then I grew up in West Germany, and I was not really in touch with the East German communist state, only when we were visiting our relatives. But then when I started to study, I came in contact with my nephews, and I had a lot of relatives in East Germany, and they were engaged in the independent peace movement because they were very Christian. Mm-hmm. And so I started to smuggle books and to bring in, especially, of course, dissidents literature, so which was forbidden in East Germany, mm-hmm. and what was very important for them. And then I came under the control of the Stasi, and I was not allowed to enter East Germany anymore. But that motivated me even more to look what is going on there, and I was studying especially the underground movement in East Germany, and that brought me after the end of the GDR to the office, the Federal Office for the Stasi Files, because this was of course the biggest archive imaginable with documents about this underground opposition movement in East Germany. And I started to work there, and after 10 years I took over the leadership of this newly founded foundation, the former Stasi prison of Hohenschönhausen in Berlin.
So as you looked at all that data, files over files, you told us they were trying to destroy them, but there's just so much that data, personal data, data about children. Has that motivated you more to take up the cause for saying data protection is important, or how has that shaped your view about personal data?
Yeah, of course, it was a very special situation that the documents of intelligence service were opened completely, mm-hmm. And I was working with these documents for a very long time, and I could really, like a book made by glass, how it mm-hmm. functioned and what was the goal of the Ministry of State Security in East Germany. And So what was something very special in GDR was that they used so many personal relations to get information. So they had a very big amount of perpetrators, of informers, and best friends could have been an informer of the Stasi, and that created a big mistrust between people. And the irony of the history is that in the end of the GDR, the oppositioners said, we don't care anymore if my best friend is working for the Stasi. We communicate like the Stasi doesn't exist, and that made them more brave than before. And so when they lost their fear, they started to gain this battle against the dictators in East Germany. So the fear is something very important, I think, in every dictatorship. If you are able to create a feeling of fear, then people obey. And if they lose their fear, then it becomes very difficult for the leadership
to control the people, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you think about Facebook, the Stasi would have loved to have a Facebook, right? People liking, showing all their preferences, showing who all they're connected with, and then you know who they're connected with. There's data that they had to pay for, data that they had to really work hard on getting, that we now see freely given. Do you think if there was a Facebook and just theoretically would have been allowed in the GDR, it would have changed something, the way the Stasi would have operated, the way maybe this fear that you are talking about would have been taken away, but it would be more surreptitious?
Yeah, you're right. I'm also sometimes thinking about what would have happened if the GDR existed longer and all these modern technologies were already in use. We could study that a little bit in the Arab countries, in Tunisia, for example, or Egypt, or now also in Turkey, how dictators are using these new medias and this new way of communication to control the society. And there was a certain period when the social media seemed to be more force to destroy dictatorships. In Tunisia, it was called a Facebook revolution. But then very quickly, these dictatorships changed their strategy, and they became very clever to control the internet, to control the social medias. And in China, for example, you can really study that, how you can create or rule a dictatorship with these social medias, and how to control the society, although they are using these more independent ways of communication. And I think what is really frightening is that the social media collects so many information, and that it is so easy to get a very sharp profile of everybody. When he's getting up in the morning, where is he going, what is he doing, to whom is he writing, and so on. Even the very private things, if somebody has a love affair or whatever, everything is registered with the help of the new medias. You can manipulate everybody very easily. So this information is very useful if you want to abuse them. And that's probably something which also should be taken into the focus, that of course in democracies you don't have to be afraid that somebody's using all this information to manipulate you or to control you and to destroy political opposition, but it can be used very quickly. So you need only one button to push.
You're so correct. I mean, there's so much data out there, and now we have all this connected technology too. People, knowing when you turn the lights on in the morning, and maybe listening to you have an Alexa there, and they're listening to you, and they're collecting all this data. And if someone has ill intent, how is that going to be regulated? How can you prevent all this data from being ill-used against the people that so freely and oftentimes, I think, without thinking, provide this data that says everything about them? And so I'm coming back to, we have the new General Data Protection Regulation coming up in May of 2018, and it's causing a lot of angst in the multinationals in the US, how much work that is, what needs to be done. And so I wanted to see from, what you have heard about that regulation, giving more data subject rights, making sure that companies are more transparent, and also making sure that they give people a right to say, hey, maybe I don't want you to hold my data anymore. Do you think that current regulation is going far enough with protecting the individual, or do you think there should be something else that's done to make sure that all this data collection, all this sale of data is being handled in a more regulated fashion?
I don't know a lot about this regulation, which will be enforced next year, but I think it's also a problem if you are able to control and to regulate this field, because so on different levels it's a problem. One level is that the state can misuse this information by, let's say, conspirative methods, by illegal methods, so they can go in without an official permission, and they can use these materials, as it's probably necessary in the fight against terrorists, but it's a big danger because you can do it with everybody. And that's a case of this prophylactic control of the society, which is quite common. So even if it's forbidden, you can be really sure that a lot of information are controlled and surveyed, also in an automated way. So if only certain keywords are mentioned in a phone call, then you can be sure that somebody is controlling that and analyzing that. And the other level is that in private companies, there are so many information which normally are used for commercial reasons, but you can't be sure if they are really hidden for other people. And secondly, I think most of the people don't realize that so many information are collected of them. And sometimes they are surprised that they get a message, do you like this music? And they realize that some days before they were listening a similar music, and somebody obviously registered that and sent them a message that this music also could be interesting for them. So I'm not sure if it's really possible to regulate. So if I'm looking in the future, I think if you really want to cut this kind of control, then you should cut all these electronic communication channels. Like in GDR times, people didn't talk about sensitive things on phone. They went into the forest, or they opened they switched on the radio, that it was not possible to tap them at home. So at this time, everybody knew what to do to not to be controlled by the secret police. Sometimes also these methods didn't work because with some microphones you could also get information if you were walking in the forest, for example. But they had in their daily life some rules what to do if you speak about sensitive topics. And I could imagine that we also go in such a period where everybody knows what to do if you want to speak about sensitive things, and that your daily life and your way of communication is changing because, if you say it on phone, then a lot of people can hear that.
So whether that's in the GDPR, or maybe it's now with all this data being there, people will start adapting and knowing, maybe as I understand more what I need to protect and how I need to protect it, they will change their behaviors. Rather than maybe some regulation being out there saying the companies need to do X, Y, Z, and maybe they do it, maybe they go around it. We don't know yet.
Yeah, but of course it's difficult to solve this problem for yourself only as a private person, because you can't really avoid this electronic tools. If you drive a car, for example, then everything will be registered in future where you're going, because the car is working with the computer inside.
Yes. And educating people on understanding at least what they give away, because I think that's where a big issue is.
That's true, yes.
People don't really know. I mean, they like it. Oh, my friend did the quiz online. I want to also know what my personality is like. They give all the data and they don't think twice. Here's what it looks like down the line. Here's how data was used.
Yeah, the philosophy of this Minister of State Security in East Germany was to know who is who. That was his main question, as he said always in his conferences. Erich Mick, he said, I want to know who is who. And we are very close to this situation to know who is who.
This would have been his dream come true. Who is who? Not only that, it's tracked with a timestamp. Where were you when you said that information? It has everything. And it's all aggregated because they're all pushing the data together. Companies selling that, other people may have your health data. What prescriptions have you ordered over the last? And it's all being aggregated. And I find that actually personally very scary, because it's not, we don't know what's going to happen in the long run with all that aggregated data. And as a person whose data is being collected, I lose more and more control on where's it going, who's handling it, how is it being pushed together.
You can't pull them back.
Are they going to say, you have to pay more for your insurance? I saw you eat that bratwurst last week. That couldn't have been healthy. Is it being used against me? Maybe I was driving too fast in the car, or was driving in an area where they are like, that's not safe.
Somebody told me that in China they have a new system at the traffic lights. They scan your face, and if you cross the street when it's red, then you see a big picture of the person, the name, the address, and the information. This guy was walking over the street when it was red. Wow. In this moment, when he was crossing the street.
Wow.
By face scanning. So it's really...
And facial recognition too, right? The name and
everything, yeah.
That's scary.
And it's like in the famous novel 1984 of George Orwell, where everybody was completely surveyed.
Yes.
Appreciating the important responsibility of protecting personal data is growing, thanks to the efforts of people like Dr. Kanaba, who challenges citizens and societal leaders to be thoughtful and respectful of individual rights to privacy, and Veronica Tonry, who brings the implications of the GDPR and risk mitigation techniques to corporate executives responsible for the processing or controlling of personal data. Her advice is simple: know the law, comply with the law, and audit your compliance.